was the dollar figure that was approved, detention only for 48 beds in juvenile, and then the expanded parking. So that was the dollar figure that was presented. That was the program at the time. One of the questions that came out of that initial study was, is this the most appropriate site for the juvenile center? You may recall there were 2 or 3 sites downtown and remotely that were studied. The idea behind this site was to ensure that as the county unified government expanded their services, that this created and fit into a campus concept and the ability to expand the other services without having to back up and find that this building maybe wasn't in the best location. So what we studied with the folks at Carter Goebel was a phasing concept of how you might begin to expand your facilities as need may grow in the future to ensure that this building wouldn't have to be removed or replaced or be in an awkward position. So again, to orient you, the City Hall, the Historic Courts, the jail, current entry here, and the Court Service Building. This is a site for the Juvenile Service Building then, but what we looked at was that the building, the 812 Court Service Building, has a lot of juvenile and adult mixed services there, both courts and community corrections court services. We looked at where we could consolidate as much as possible all like services for judicial purposes. One of the ways is your current 4th and 5th floor of the historic courts are vastly unused. One of those floors is unused and is the old jail. The other one has just a small corner of it being used. So it's got a light well in the middle, so it has a bit of a donut shape. What we studied is, could the office spaces from the court service building be located into that space appropriately? So the detail of our report indicates that yes, there's an adequate room to take care of that. Additionally, you have the Treasury and the Register of Deeds still located in this facility, which is not judicial functions. Logically, you would want to see if it's possible to locate judicial functions all in one place for kind of one-stop shopping for your customer, the public. Those 2 spaces would actually be located appropriately for public service to be able to be used for courts. So there are currently 2 courtrooms over in the court service building that could be relocated to this location in the future that would allow this building then to not have to be in service. You could either renovate it for other purposes, but it would consolidate all the judicial functions into this facility. If then, as you grew, you could create a single point of entry for all public access. That single point of entry could allow then for all court and juvenile. That would close this street in the future if in fact this option were taken. This is not part of this particular project. This is to ensure that as you grow, one can accommodate future need. From there, the court service building could be either renovated and reused or be removed and have a new court as court addition, as additional courts may be needed. This is maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So what we're trying to indicate is that you can create a county complex of judicial functions with a singular point of public entry, which would reduce your cost of security control and have all of those like functions. You could have as well the municipal court, which is currently over in the City Hall, be located there, as well as a jury assembly space, which is currently underserved. So what we determined from these phasing is that in fact things would work well to stay in this area, and the juvenile services which would tie into that would be able to be a good fit for this. So what I'd like to do is talk to you about the solutions that we're coming up with for the juvenile services building. One of the things we recognize is that your juvenile numbers have slowed. That's a great thing. It's due in part to a lot of indicators nationwide where we're seeing a lot of juvenile programs work. There's a state initiative to remove kids from detention, which is another good aspect. What it means is that you don't need 48 beds of juvenile detention today. There's a prospect that those numbers could go back up if the state's program initiatives don't work as well. So 5, 10 years down the road, you have to be ready and flexible to adjust to those numbers. What we recognized is that we have the ability then to reduce the number of detention beds. In studying it with Terry and the sheriff and the staff, we recognized that 29 beds of detention, which is 2 11-bed units for male and 1 7-bed unit for female, would probably adequately for the next 10 years be able to take care of your juvenile detention numbers. What was also talked about is the idea of a sanction house. Right now, if a juvenile comes with a probationary issue, the judges don't really have a location for them. So one of the things the sanction house does is for post-adjudicated kids to be able to have a place to stay in the community and then give the judge options for keeping the kids in the community. So that sanction house could also work as overflow detention space. So again, as your detention numbers fluctuate, you can have options there. So you end up with a total of a 40-bed capacity on the detention side. Obviously, it has the other aspects of detention of central control and detention visitation. And of course, remember that each one of these kids are still being educated. So there are classrooms, there are program spaces for these kids in detention. In doing so, what we recognized is that reduction in the detention capacity gave us room within the building to logically bring some services to it. One of those is the non-detention community-based programs. These are the program initiatives that will continue to reduce your detention numbers. So these are kids who are not in detention, but either are at risk or in some type of a program in lieu of detention, day school, and a lot of other types of programs that don't currently exist that are going to be served so your numbers of detention kids can stay down. Again, the idea of reducing the number of kids in detention is the objective. The other thing we recognized is that the connection link to that court services building was also to provide a secure connection link for a juvenile who is in detention to be able to be transferred to court securely without going outside or without being put in a car. What we recognized is for the cost of that link, that the family courtrooms, 2 courtrooms plus a hearing room, could be moved to be included into this program. It's one of the ways in which we are increasing the budget, but it does put all of the juvenile services from the family courts, the court services, and the community corrections into this building. So all juvenile services now will be a one-stop shop for the public. The public will come in a single point of entry. We then look to recognize some guiding principles about how we put these spaces together. We have secure spaces and non-secure spaces. I'm not going to get too much into this, but we've been working diligently with the sheriff, his staff, the judges, the court services, community corrections to ensure that we have the right spaces securely positioned to work well together, and those spaces that are outside of that secure area to work well together. So this is the site. Again, I'm going to orient you. This is the jail. This is the court services, 812 building. The historic courts are right here. So this is the site. Right now, this site actually slopes heavily. You're all very familiar with it, but it slopes down from this being the high point, down about 25 feet down to this end. It slopes back up about 5 feet there and another 10 feet back up. So it's kind of a lopsided table effect on its site. So it's a little bit of a challenging site, but we're going to use that to our advantage. So we believe that the lower level would be primarily the detention aspects. So the current layout would have a vehicular sally port here for secure delivery and for arresting officers. The yellow is the detention housing. The blue is the sanction housing. We organize this around an outdoor courtyard. Remember, these juveniles still need outdoor space, and some juveniles can be here for a substantial amount of time. So if you can imagine your kid, and in raising kids at 4 o'clock, if they didn't get some outdoor time to run around, their energy level becomes a maintenance issue for you as a parent. It becomes a maintenance issue for people administrating a detention facility. But then it has classrooms, programs, and school areas here. So all organized around the yellow, which is a circulation ring. Then on the main level, above that detention level, is the front entry. The yellow is the lobby. We'll then have the non-detention programs. So there'll be a lot of kids showing up, going in the main entry and using these program spaces directly. So there'll be a sub-lobby to immediately have those kids kind of go through a process to be checked in into that school. And then the rest of that first floor will simply be offices, as well as the JIAC, which is the Juvenile Intake Assessment Center. There's also as part of that, what's called SINC, Child in Need of Care. Many times if parents are arrested for a meth lab, for instance, if there are children involved, those children still have to be taken care of while they're being transferred to a state handling. So child in need of care cases actually are more prevalent than what they used to be, and therefore there's a child in need of care sleeping areas, because many times those arrests are made at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we'll have those types of accommodations. And then stacking above that is the courts, family courts and judiciary spaces. So what we have is actually 3 levels. We have an outdoor courtyard for the kids who are in the non-detention programs, and an outdoor courtyard for the kids who are in detention programs. We will screen those courtyards so that they won't be seen from any building. We'll screen those courtyards to prevent something from being thrown into them. So there will be a net type of a situation. You will not see the net or any of the screening that looks like razor wire or anything of the sorts from the street level at all. So we'll do it through building components. One of the things to recognize is parking. Parking is always at issue. It is at issue with this site. This site has 168 parking spaces in the immediate site where this building will be located. It also has 24 spaces between that site and the court services building. Those 24 spaces will be able to be kept. So we're displacing 168 spaces. And therefore, what we're recognizing is that the parking that we're anticipating will be an expanded parking down in this location. We also recognize that parking expansion needs to occur before the construction of this building so that those 168 spaces don't go in limbo during construction. So John and I are working out a sequencing of events. Those properties are not fully yet owned by the unified government, so that's in process. But the parking expansion would then allow the second piece to happen, which would be the juvenile center construction. That parking that's going to go behind Memorial Hall actually has a capacity of about 200 spaces. So while the project isn't intended to net increase and solve all of your parking problems, I think your parking problems will continue to evolve as you solve the county's long-term issues. It will increase the capacity of parking by about 40 spaces. So it is an improvement to parking in the end result. Lastly, the costs. We have gone down in the number of inmates for juvenile capacity from 48 down to 40. We used some of that savings to accommodate the courts, the community corrections, and the court services, but the net increase in those spaces drove the cost to what we estimate to be at $23,349,000 right now, and that does include the construction of the parking as well. And with that, I'll hopefully address any questions that you might have, or go back through any information that maybe I covered too quickly.
One thing I'll just clarify, Mayor, too, with this project, as we presented it, really as a result of the efficiencies from Sheriff Ash and facilities where we're working with over in that facility, we're able to save money within the county budget, which is enabling us to move forward with this project without any kind of tax increase or special bond issue, which as you look across the state or other communities, when you see county projects, county courthouses, jails like that done, those are always special bond issues that are done to increase tax rates or have dedicated mills. We are building this from within what is the current existing county budget by those savings that we're getting back through detention operations that have come from what the sheriff has put together in the double bunking operations. We're having to spend some other money, on the units and stuff to make sure we will continue to house that and have the personnel available. But that enables us to issue the debt over the time period and be able to fund it from within that, what we're projecting at this time.
I'm really excited about this project on a couple levels. One, our kids should not be in a prison. That putting the youth in there was an afterthought. It was not what was intended. It's non-compliant, so we have to move them out. And it gives us a lot of flexibility back in our jail for adult housing. And the improvements that we're making in that, we're already underway with about $7 million, is that right, in improvements to the jail now? Really maintenance, elevators, roof, things that are not very exciting, but until they don't work. But
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning, that's right. So I think this facility is a big step forward for us. The other piece is, if we're going to break this cycle of crime and poverty at a young age, we need to get kids into a facility that is focused entirely on rehabilitation. There are only a handful of kids that belong in prison long-term, and there are some egregious offenders who are going to have to be in a lockdown facility for a long time. The vast majority of our kids need to have an opportunity to turn themselves around, and I think this facility focused on rehabilitation will be much, much better for our kids and ultimately for the long-term success of our community. We can't just throw our kids away. We've got to give them an opportunity to turn it around, and providing the wraparound services for the families that they need so the families can be successful. Because the majority of our kids who end up here are having troubles at home. And if we can help the home environment with these wraparound services built into this, I very much like the one-stop shop for all juvenile services. I like the courts there. I like all the family services there. The children in need of care. If a kid comes in at 2 a.m, the scramble to drop them off somewhere. I mean, this is a big improvement to make sure the kids feel safe and have an opportunity. The other piece so this is big, and then I like that it gives us an opportunity to look at a single judicial complex down the road. The court services building ultimately needs to be torn down. Though I know there's some architecturally who are saying, no, that model is going to come back in a few years. Maybe. I'm not seeing it soon, but maybe. The other thing that is an outgrowth of this, that is a benefit that's just built into this, parking for Memorial Hall. We have not been able to leverage the use of Memorial Hall the way we need to forever. And 200 parking spaces behind Memorial Hall is going to make that facility much more usable in evenings and weekends. It's going to become an event space again. And we need that parking to make that happen. So the benefit for the daytime use of UG employees and visitors to our judicial center to be able to use this parking, but the ancillary benefit of being able to leverage it for our Memorial Hall to make it an event space again. So there's a lot of wins in this program. And Sheriff, I know you've been instrumental in this, and I appreciate your leadership in getting this to where we
Yes,
are.
if I could just highlight a couple more things. This is one of them right here. Right now, where's the red light right there? Where's the red light? Oh, okay, all right. This parking lot is dead space most of the time. It gets used Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Doesn't get used on the weekends. Maybe 3 unified government cars that get left in there, or on the weekends. By switching that space out for the new parking area, you get dual use out of that. Our employees can park there during the day, and as the mayor has already pointed out, you can use it in the evenings and on the weekends. So you're gonna get dual purpose. You're gonna get much better flexibility in the parking by switching that. Number 2, does anybody think the courthouse is going away? The courthouse building is coming down someday or anything short of a nuclear holocaust or something like that? It's not. And once again, we have 2 floors that are not being used. So The concept I've used in the jail is to maximize use of this space, not build a new jail with more beds and more capacity. Let's maximize what we have. Same way with the courthouse. Let's maximize what we have at a much lower cost than building something new. When we put the juvenile center there and we move, about 40 or so employees from the juvenile detention center, other than that, with the courts and the court services and all of those people, there's probably around another 100 employees we talking about collating over there. I thought I read a number that it would be about 165 total employees, of which probably 40 of them are from the current juvenile people. But JIAC and all of the people, we will have already scaled down the workforce in that building so that it sets it, to be, you have fewer people to relocate when you get ready, to do something there. That's additional efficiency there. And then, once again, the mayor highlighted having one place for the police, the courts, the Department of Children's and Families, and everybody that deals with the issues of use to go to is, once again, more efficient than them having to go here or over, and then over here to the court, and then maybe upstairs up here or somewhere else. We will have the capacity to, to handle it all right there effectively and efficiently. So I just wanted to highlight those additional efficiencies. Be sure you didn't miss them.
I also have a question. Have we recently improved that parking lot we're going to tear up? Are we losing an asset there?
No, we haven't done anything to that parking lot.
Is it all gravel yet? It's headed there.
It's headed there.
It's headed to all gravel. So this is a long neglected parking lot anyway. Commissioner Bynum? Just the way we planned it.
The new parking, would it have the possibility of also serving for jury parking?
Yes, I think one of the concepts we have, since you look at the overall map that shows the overall site view, since the security bank building sits to the north with the parking lot, which is Lot D for our reference, probably with the new juvenile center, we will probably have the employees move in there, which currently we hold about 250 spaces a week for Monday for our jurors to come in and report in and be able to use that parking. So as the sheriff pointed out, a lot of dead space associated with it. We'll probably convert juror parking over more to the Memorial Hall area, put our employees in Lot D, north of the site, that are going to the juvenile center. So all the employees that are working in that site there or whatever, so they'll have easier access. They're just crossing the street to come into it. The jurors could potentially walk a little bit further, but that's once a week and once every how many years or something for somebody that's coming in from that perspective. But we do allow for the parking to come in, and then that dual purpose of being with the other facility. So it's more likely that the juror parker will move over to the Memorial Hall area.
Commissioner Johnson?
The phase one is the proposed $23 million. Any, I don't know, estimate net present value of what the phase two or phase three might be looking at?
We haven't studied it only.
Can you turn your microphone on, sir? Thank you.
We have not studied that in any detail because we don't know yet the full program. What we do recognize is that the unified government about 8 years ago had issued an RFQ for the 4th and 5th floors, and at that time it was budgeted at $8 million. So with the courts down below, you would be in the $10 million range or so for phase two. We have not put any real numbers to phases 3, 4, 5 because until you know whether it includes municipal court, does it include the jury, it's really difficult to understand this size.
Well, and the other thing I think we need, that courthouse, which is probably our best piece of architecture in the entire community. That and Memorial Hall are gems. Of course, City Hall, everyone just loves how beautiful City Hall is. But those two are going to be in our inventory forever. They're great historic pieces of architecture. They're no question those costs are terrifying of what's hidden behind each wall. In terms of electrical, plumbing, HVAC, I mean, those are hard to do, and to do them architecturally well is difficult. But they're also great buildings that should be used, and we should have people in them. There's an opportunity to look at the offices of the DA, which are over in the jail on the bottom floor, not optimally located themselves. And that's more space that if we could free up for the jail could bring in some light bunking opportunities. I think you had mentioned that we could do something with more dormitory style for minimum security offenders that a lot of the places we farm people out to actually use. So there's an additional usage in the jail for that. But this really gives us an opportunity to be smart about what phases 2 and 3 and 4 look like, to really master plan the usage of our courts, how many courtrooms we need, how many chambers we need for our judges, what kind of administrative support we need for our judges, and the security piece of all of these buildings. I mean, it really gives us an opportunity to look ahead to the future, which is going to be needed.
And Mr. Mayor, the thing I would add to it is the phase 2, which is within a historic building that's already on the register, is eligible for any dollars that you spend there for historic tax credits to account for about 20% of the cost. So you do get a kicker there from that tax credit program, as well as the architect in me recognizes that if one actually stands at the street and gazes at those buildings, which we architects sometimes do, you'll recognize there's actually some similarities in the composition of those structures of 6 large columns, each kind of occupying the whole block. So as one looks at the future of this building in its final form, which may not be in any of our service lifetimes here, but depending upon the need, I could see a presence of 3 grand buildings, 2 that are historic and 1 that is contemporary, that work well together with a simple glass entry that, again, where everybody knows and identifies as the entrance for the county government.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. This is going to accommodate 40 juveniles. What's our average for the detention center for the juveniles now, Sheriff?
Well, it's come down significantly over the last few years. When the study was done in 2015, Carter Gobelee and Dan and the team were looking at data from 2012, 13, and 14. Now our average daily population for 2016, I believe, was like 21. Yeah, so today I think there are 16 in custody. And about a month ago, we had as few as 6. So we don't know for sure what all of the outcomes of Senate Bill 367 and the legislature reworked some of that in this legislative session. So we're not going to know until July 1st, what our impacts are there. But Judge York has been monitoring this closely, and we've had a team of people who have been looking at it and, starting to forecast how we would respond as a unit of government to this. So I don't even know have we had 20 in custody this calendar year? Maybe just for a couple of days. But mostly for most of calendar year 2017, we've had fewer than 20 in custody. Now, the 11, 11, and 7 is significant because the state mandates a client to a supervisor or, a correction juvenile care worker to client ratio of 7-to-1 during the daytime and 11-to-1 during the nighttime. So it doesn't make sense for us to build housing units larger than 11, because if those numbers go down, we can just close a housing unit there. And that's why we built the female unit at 7, because when we have females in custody, we have 1, and then maybe we'll have 2 or 3, and then 1 or 2 of them get out, and they're not, the females are not normally there very long. So that's the reason we constructed them in 11, 11, and 7. And then the sanction house section gives our juvenile judges a lot more flexibility for dealing with some that need just a little more incentive maybe to go along with the program with that before they get put in detention.
Okay, thank you. With the opportunity for there to be more open space in this complex, will the juveniles be able to actually go outside, or only some of them, child in need of care versus those that are there for other reasons?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It is both a requirement and the thing to do. Kids need outdoor space more than the rest of us even. So the detention kids will have access to outdoor space 24/7 as they administrate the building. Obviously, not going out at midnight, but they have access that is specifically only for the detention kids. The non-detention program space also has an outdoor space, so they will have outdoor space available to them anytime the program's running. The SYNC kids will have a small area. We also are providing a small outdoor area for visitation. It's very, very productive to see kids and parents together, kids and family together out in an outdoor space. It promotes conversation. So there's outdoor spaces associated with every kid that's in the facility.
Great, that's great to hear. One of the best times I had last year was the Christmas event that I participated in with the wonderful staff, but it was depressing to know that the kids could only look out a matter of feet and see whether it was sunshiny, snowing, so I'm glad to hear that that will not be the case with this.
Actually, that's another very good feature that we didn't cover in detail. One of the things that is abhorrent in a lot of juvenile detention facilities is that because you have to protect the identity of the juvenile, a lot of times you'll end up fogging or frosting the glass so they can't see out. We've done this before in a facility in Virginia, as well as one that we're doing down in Springfield that's just under bid. The sleeping rooms are here, but they have a space behind them that's actually for mechanical chase so that the plumbing fixtures can be easily accessed and serviced without having to put the kids in the sleeping rooms and lock down. But what that also does is that means that the outside shell of this can actually look like an office building. It can look not that slit window jail detention look, so we can have a presentable building downtown. But what that 5-foot gap between there also does is it means that you can't see in to the sleeping room. So the windows can actually be clear. So the kid would actually be able to look out onto the street and see what's going on, but no one from the street would be able to look in and communicate with anybody. So what you're trying to do is remove the communication and the identification of the juvenile, and so we have that safety factor built into that. Shutters on the in that chase would be able to simply flip and shut so that at nighttime you won't be able to see in and see the kids as well. So we're excited about the ability to have the kids have a very normalized environment. By that I mean simply that something that doesn't feel as if it is an oppressive environment.
Again, glad to hear that. The staff does a tremendous job with the environment that is there already, but I have to believe that this will be encouraging to those kids who find themselves there, from what I've grown to understand, a lot of times through no fault of their own. And I think that that would also be helpful to those who work there every day.
Absolutely.
So that the privacy of the kids is maintained, but they're normalized in some way.
The staff has embraced, we've talked a lot about the trauma-informed nature of juvenile design. That's a contemporary thought process. We've done facilities across the country that award-winning for that very reason, and the staff has fully embraced the idea of a trauma-informed, that we don't want to create additional trauma on these kids' lives. What we want to do, because most of these kids are pre-adjudicated awaiting their time in court, is to make sure that they're safe, that they're educated, that they're well cared for while they get processed, and then as they go, place them back into the environment, into the community where we know that they need to be in the first place. So that's the whole objective of the facility.
Thank you.
I will say Commissioner Townsend throws a heck of a party. We had I had a privilege of coming over to the party, and she throws a great party for the kids. And just thank the staff at our juvenile center for the conditions in which they work. Really appreciate that. Appreciate the overriding compassion and firmness that goes with our juvenile program. The Judge Cahill and Judge York do a great job adjudicating these kids. Sheriff, you and your team do a great job. The juvenile team does a great job. So we've got a lot of people who care about our kids, who are doing the best we can, and I think this facility is going to help us as a community better care for our kids and get people moving on the right track and get them back in the community. As many kids outside these walls as we can have is really the goal. So thank you all. I don't see any more questions from anyone. So with that, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move that the commission go into executive session until 7 p.m. to discuss confidential matters regarding employer-employee negotiations, consultation with our attorney related to pending litigation under the attorney-client privilege, and confidential matters regarding purchase price and property locations related to land acquisition, all as permitted under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that staff designated by the county administrator be present to participate in the discussion. It gets longer every time, guys.
Is there a second? I was going to say I missed a line. Can you reread that for me? But I think we've got it in the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are recused into executive.
The commission will reconvene in open session at 7:00 p.m. in the commission chambers on the first floor.